The void is silent, but in that silence, something stirs. A war thought won, buried beneath the centuries of blood and fire, suddenly rekindles. What if the peace of Ultramar, the shining jewel of the Imperium, was never truly sealed? What if a shadow lurks beneath the surface, an ancient conflict poised to tear everything apart once more? This is not a tale of heroes basking in glory. This is the story of Captain Titus, returning from the fringes of oblivion, and the hidden war that threatens to shatter Ultramar's fragile peace forever. The cerulean skies of Macragge, Ultramar's homeworld, stretch endlessly above, a realm bathed in light, order, and the echo of legends. Yet beneath the serene expanse, unseen currents swirl, carrying whispers of betrayal and forgotten sins. Captain Titus of the Ultramarines, grizzled and battle-hardened, steps down from the transport shuttle that bore him through the warp's merciless storm. The air hums with expectancy as the towering figure of the chapter's champion makes landfall, his armor scarred, his eyes sharpened by horrors no mortal should endure. His return was not heralded by fanfare or celebration. No cheering crowds awaited him, only hushed silence and guarded glances. The homecoming of such a warrior promised salvation, yet beneath that hope, a gnawing unease festered. For Titus returned bearing a secret so perilous it threatened to unravel the very foundations of Ultramar's dominance. The story begins not with Titus's arrival, but in the darkest depths of the galaxy, the war-torn, forgotten fringes, where the Ultramarines faced an enemy unknown, implacable, relentless. At the end of an endless campaign, the captain's forces stumbled upon a revelation. A covert xenos cult wielding dark arcane powers, embedded deep within Ultramar systems. They moved like ghosts, corrupting minds and twisting loyalty, infecting the hearts of imperial worlds with their insidious venom. Titus led the assault that shattered the cult's outer cells, but at a cost. As his warriors fell, a deadly parasite was unleashed, one that burrowed into the warp's shadows and spread its corruption like wildfire. The captain barely escaped his life, though not unscarred. His journey back to Macragge was a voyage through nightmares, his mind haunted by visions of betrayal and shadows stirring in daylight. Back on Macragge, the Ultramarines' fortress monastery stood as a beacon of hope, a bastion of the Emperor's will. Expectation hung heavy in the air when Titus finally walked through its colossal gates, yet what greeted him was far from welcome. The chapter's inner circle regarded him with suspicion, their eyes sharp and unyielding. Ultramar's leaders feared not the enemy without, but the enemy within. Titus's reports of the xenos cult and the warp-born plague struck chords of dread and denial. How could such infernal corruption find root in Ultramar's most sacred realms? Evidence was scarce, and half-truths clouded the investigation. Political factions within the chapter seized on the uncertainty, deepening fractures that festered beneath their polished armor. As days turned to weeks, a subtle war erupted, not on distant battlefields, but in council halls and shadowed corridors. Allies became adversaries. Whispers of conspiracy echoed with each passing night. Titus found himself isolated, his warnings met with thinly veiled hostility. Yet the corruption he feared was real, lurking beneath Ultramar's gilded veneer, striking at its soul. Outside, Ultramar's vast systems churned on, seemingly untouched by the gathering storm. Yet pockets of unrest flared, worlds trembling on the brink of rebellion, lords swayed by dark promises, psychers driven mad by voices no one else could hear. The hidden war spread like poison, invisible and unstoppable. Titus, burdened by his role as both warrior and harbinger, embarked on a desperate quest to uncover the true scope of the threat. Each clue revealed twisted webs of deceit, cultists embedded in the highest echelons of power, corrupted artifacts of xenos origin, and a disturbing pattern of disappearances among loyal Ultramarines. These dark undertones painted a picture of treason not only external but deeply ingrained. When night falls over Macragge, shadows lengthen and secrets take flight. The fortress monastery becomes a labyrinth of suspicion, its ancient halls whispering of betrayals old and new. Titus moves through this maze, a lone sentinel against an unseen enemy. Every step is perilous, every alliance uncertain. His legacy, once celebrated, now hangs by a thread. What monstrous force fuels this hidden war? How deep has the corruption spread? And what price will Titus pay to save Ultramar? As the silence of the void breaks, the first shots of this covert conflict are fired, and nothing will ever be the same again. But as Titus sharpens his blade for battles yet to come, a revelation awaits in the darkness, one that will shatter truth and illusion alike. Amidst grim determination and dread anticipation, the question remains, will Ultramar survive what lies beneath? Or will the hidden war consume the very light it once fought to protect? The calm before the storm is fading. Somewhere in the shadows of the Imperium's greatest realm, a war begins, not with a roar, but a whisper. And Captain Titus stands on the edge, ready to face the nightmare that no one else dares see. The answer to Ultramar's fate is coming, sooner than anyone imagines. In the stifling shadows of the fortress monastery's inner sanctums, the pulse of Ultramar's hidden war quickened. Captain Titus moved with deliberate intent, the weight of centuries-old duty pressing upon his shoulders like the crushing gravity of a dying star. His armor bore the scars of battle, but it was his soul that showed the deepest wounds, fractured by betrayals both seen and unseen, by questions that clawed into the heart of everything he believed in. Weeks had passed since his return, yet no respite came. News from the periphery darkened with every moment. Worlds once steadfast now whispered of unrest beneath their shining surfaces. The xenos cult that had first marked the fringes of Ultramar's worlds had seeded something far worse, a corrupting vapor rising unseen, slipping through the cracks in loyalty, spreading doubt as surely as it spread death. The council chambers buzzed with tension. The high lords of Ultramar, masters of ambition wrapped in pacts of order, argued heatedly behind closed doors, their words dripping with suspicion and veiled threats. Titus stood apart, a lone island amidst a storm of political tempest, his warnings dismissed as paranoia or worse, a threat to unity. Even those closest to him hesitated, caught between faith in their leader and fear of the invisible enemy. On a bleak, rain-soaked night, beneath the cathedral ceiling where banners faded under centuries of dust and prayers, Titus found himself confronting Inquisitor Maltharin, a figure cloaked in mystery and authority. Maltharin was both ally and enigma. His eyes mirrored the abyss, cold, calculating, and unreadable. "The infection beneath Ultramar runs deeper than you imagine, Captain," Maltharin said, voice low yet commanding, as they stood before a hololithic map, plotting the troubled systems. "This is not merely a rebel xeno sect or a rogue psyker's folly. It is far older, more insidious. It threatens to bring even the Emperor's might to its knees." Titus absorbed the weight of the Inquisitor's words. Together, they sifted through intelligence, cryptic distress calls from worlds that should have remained loyal, missing Ultramarines, and strange sightings of spectral figures drifting in Imperial halls. Every piece pointed toward a sinister tapestry woven long before the recent conflicts. "Is it possible," Titus began cautiously, "that this corruption is tied to the ancient ciphers we discovered on the battlefields? The ones inscribed on the relics from the warp storms?" Maltharin nodded gravely. "Those relics are fragments of a forgotten past, artifacts tied to the Dark Mechanicum, heretics who once allied with Xenos forces and bound their souls to forbidden knowledge. Their return would spell devastation greater than any war Ultramar has yet known." The silence that followed was thick, heavy with dread. In the days that followed, Titus's campaigns took on a new urgency. Not only did he need to contain the cult's growing influence, but he also sought to unearth the history of these relics and their cursed legacy. His warriors marched through haunted battlefields and abandoned hive cities, the echoes of ancient wars bleeding into the present. The stained stones of these ruins whispered secrets, stories of comrades turning on each other, of brotherhood shattered by madness. It was on the ruined world of Caledon Prime that Titus found the first tangible proof. Amidst the skeletal remains of a chapter outpost, buried beneath twisted ruins, lay a data crystal, its contents encrypted and fragmented, but the message undeniable. The cult was merely a fragment of a long-suppressed schism, remnants of a dark ultra-heresy that sought to sow chaos within the Ultramarines from the shadows. As Titus pored over the decrypted data, an insidious truth gnawed at him. This was no spontaneous rebellion. The corruption was nurtured, cultivated by unseen hands within Ultramar itself, hands that might with a badge of loyalty, but carried hearts blackened with ambition. The seeds of doubt shattered something within Titus. Could the purity of Ultramar even withstand this internal rot? Was the chapter's creed foundational or fragile? Each revelation deepened the chasm between him and those meant to be his allies. One sleepless night, Titus stood alone upon the monastery's battlements, staring out at the cerulean horizon etched with streaks of distant lightning. The air was thick with the promise of storms, both cosmic and mortal. His reflections were interrupted by the quiet approach of Sergeant Varric, a veteran whose stoicism was as unyielding as the stone walls around them. "The men are losing faith, Captain," Varric said quietly, his voice weighted with an unspoken fear. "This war within war, it's eating us alive. The shadows grow longer each day, and trust frays like worn cloth." Titus's gaze hardened. "We must be the light that refuses to flicker, Varric. The truth will be our weapon, and determination our shield. There can be no surrender to despair." Varric nodded, but in his eyes lingered the question that haunted them all. What if the light itself was compromised? The following weeks were marked by desperate hunts across Ultramar's vast empire. Titus's forces clashed with cult fanatics twisted by warp corruption, their savagery fueled by a fury that bordered on madness. Battles unfolded beneath alien stars, each encounter a brutal testament to a war that had burrowed into the very marrow of Ultramar's power. In the depths of a hidden fortress beneath the storm-racked jungles of Glossandia, Titus made a discovery that cracked the case wide open. Within ancient catacombs, a chamber bathed in unholy light pulsed with a warp-tainted artifact, an obelisk bound to the Dark Mechanicum's legacy. Its surface writhed with sigils that seemed to move beneath his eyes, whispering forbidden knowledge and promises of dominion. As he reached out, visions exploded behind his eyelids, fallen heroes twisted into heretic lords, Ultramarines broken by deceit, worlds burned to ash under the shadow of this hidden power. The obelisk was a linchpin. Its destruction could stem the corruption or trigger apocalypse. Returning to Macragge, Titus sought counsel with Chief Librarian Antoros, hoping for guidance from the chapter's psychic acumen. Together, they confronted harsh truths about the warp's influence, learning that the corruption was not simply external, but woven into the fabric of Ultramar's own psychic defenses. Purging it would require sacrifices none yet willing to voice. Amidst these revelations, an unexpected figure emerged from the shadows, Ardelius Valker, a rogue tech marine cast out for pursuing forbidden knowledge. He claimed to have uncovered links between the obelisk and a dormant network of dark machines buried beneath Ultramar's surface, remnants of lost wars and heresies that could augment or annihilate the chapter's power. His motives were murky. Was he a desperate savior or a new threat in disguise? Titus faced a crucible of decision: trust the exile and risk unleashing greater evils, or shut him out and potentially lose the means to fight the war from within. As silence grew pregnant with impossibility, a single, shattering event broke the tenuous calm. In the heart of the fortress monastery, during a ceremony meant to honor the chapter's fallen, an explosion of warp energy tore through the sacred halls. The great statue of Guilliman, Emperor's favorite son and Ultramar's eternal symbol, cracked and bled an eerie, dark light. The culprit was unseen, yet the signature unmistakable, a warp strike born from within their own ranks. Chaos erupted. Warriors scrambled to contain the breach, psychic wards faltered, and screams echoed through stone corridors once thought unassailable. Titus found himself battling not just enemies without, but shadows within, the face of treachery revealed, but wrapped in a mask too familiar for comfort. As the dust settled, the truth came into harsh relief. The hidden war was no longer clandestine. Its fires now blazed openly among Ultramar's champions. Trust shattered, alliances crumbled, and the monolith of Ultramar's glory trembled on the edge of collapse. Titus, standing amidst the ruin, felt the full weight of his burden. The war was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a war for the soul of Ultramar itself. And in that moment of devastating clarity, he realized the fight was just beginning. The true enemy was no longer a distant shadow, but the very legacy he had sworn to protect. The glint of eyeless dread shone behind his eyes, reflecting the battle yet to come. The hidden war had awakened. The echoes of destruction still reverberated through the shattered halls when Captain Titus stood alone amidst the wreckage, his breath ragged, armor smeared with ethereal blood that seemed not quite of this realm. The scars of the attack were fresh, but deeper wounds gnawed at his conscience. The line between friend and foe had blurred, leaving only shadows in its wake. The war that had long been whispered in corners and corridors now sprawled rampant across the sanctity of Ultramar's greatest bastion. A cold breeze swept through the broken windows, carrying with it the faint scent of ozone and something far more unsettling: decay, corruption, betrayal. Titus's gaze fell upon the fractured statue of Guilliman, its glowing fissures pulsing with tainted warp energy, like a dying heart struggling against an unseen rot. The embodiment of hope and honor, fractured and bleeding, mirrored the fracture blossoming within Titus's own soul. It was in this void of certainty that Ardelius Valkyr approached, his presence unsettling in the aftermath of chaos. No longer merely a rogue tech marine cast out for heretical pursuits, Valkyr now held answers wrapped in riddles darker than the void. His eyes, once navy blue, now flickered with the cold gleam of machine and man fused unnaturally. "Captain," he said softly, voice laced with an eerie resonance, "you sought the truth, and now it stands before you in stark relief. But the enemy you fight may not be what you think." Titus stiffened, suspicion warping the lines of his jaw. "Speak plainly, Valkyr." The tech marine's hand gestured toward the shattered armor, plating strewn around, evidence of the battle's carnage. The obelisk's power is but a fragment of a gargantuan design, one which spans not just worlds but eons. The network beneath Ultramar, it is a conduit, an ancient mechanism that not only channels warp energy, but manipulates will, fractures loyalty, and primes entire systems for invasion. It was never merely a relic. It is a weapon. Titus's mind raced as the pieces of a sprawling conspiracy fell into place. Had the Emperor's realm been subjected to siege long before any war? Had insidious whispers sown doubt and treachery for centuries from within? His heart thundered beneath his armor, a mixture of rage and despair. "Then this network," he breathed, "controls minds. It turns allies into traitors, friends into enemies. We have been puppets in a play we never realized was scripted." Valkyr's face hardened. "And the actors? But you, Titus, you have been different. The parasite within your mind was incomplete, and that's why you retained free will. The others were consumed." The revelation sent a chill cascading down Titus's spine. He was both savior and anomaly, a lone holdout on a battlefield where the enemy had long since won. The weight of isolation pressed down, cold and suffocating. In the hours that followed, the fortress monastery became a labyrinth of suspicion and paranoia. Titus paced its ancient corridors, eyes haunted by ghosts seen and unseen. The walls whispered secrets that no soul dared speak aloud. His mind played cruel tricks, visions of brothers fallen not to alien blades, but the betrayal of corrupted minds, his closest allies potentially lost to invisible chains. Yet amid the uncertainty, a spark of resolve ignited. If Ultramar's salvation depended on severing the network, then the path would be perilous, but necessary. Seeking counsel with Chief Librarian Antoros, Titus found an uneasy alliance forged in necessity. Antoros, draped in the shadowy robes of the chapter's psychic vanguard, had delved deep into forbidden tomes, walking the razor's edge between revelation and madness. "The warp touches all, Captain," Antoros intoned. "But this corruption is an old sickness, more than mere contagion. It is a blight on the very soul of Ultramar, intertwined with its glory and its sins." Together, they devised a plan, a desperate strike at the heart of the network, a strike that would require diving into the depths below the fortress, where ancient machine spirits lay dormant, yet still whispered their dark song. Yet every step closer to the truth was a step closer to damnation. The risks multiplied. The sacrifices grew heavier. As preparations unfolded, Titus retreated into a solitary chamber. Staring into the holographic image of the obelisk, he confronted his deepest fears. A slow crescendo of memories washed over him. Visions of camaraderie and conflict, faith and doubt, victories celebrated and sacrifices mourned. The line between past and present blurred with uncanny clarity. He touched the cool relic etched with heretical sigils, feeling the tug of the warp's malevolence beneath his fingertips. A sudden, chilling whisper echoed in his mind, fragments of voices, fevered prayers, broken promises. "You cannot save us all," they murmured. "Some betray from love, some from despair. The true enemy is not out there. It is within." The words shattered his resolve, fracturing certainty into shards of vulnerability. For the first time in his life, Titus questioned not only the enemy's identity but his own place in this endless war. But there was no time for doubt. Suddenly, alarms blared through the fortress monastery, a pulse of dark energy rippling through its core. The network had awakened, responding violently to their discovery. The ground shook. Ancient engines roared to life beneath the stone and steel. Corridors flickered from light to shadow as power surged erratically. Titus raced through the labyrinthine halls, finding his warriors already thrust into battle against foes both physical and spectral. Phantoms born of warp's corruption, their forms distorted by anguish and rage. The symphony of war clashed with the eerie hum of eldritch machinery, as Ultramar faced a foe that bled reality itself. In the heat of chaos, Titus encountered a vision, a fleeting glimpse of figure clad in the darkest blue armor adorned with Ouroboros sigils, staring back at him with eyes not quite human. A figure indistinguishable from himself, but exuding malevolence. The vision taunted him with a single, terrifying truth. The corruption was not merely external. It was a reflection of his own doubt, his fears, his hidden shadows. Ultramar's enemy was the darkness lurking within every heart, waiting for a crack to fester and grow. A sudden explosion ripped the air. Titus was thrown against ancient stone, armor splintering as concussive force shattered stained glass, and echoes of shattered prayers filled the void. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Yet even in the turmoil, a quiet realization anchored him. Ultramar's salvation would demand more than swords and bolter fire. It would require confronting the darkest truths of their own souls. As smoke curled into the night sky and cries of battle faded into haunting silence, Titus knew the war's shape was changing. No facade of loyalty could mask the fracture that now ran through the chapter's heart. And amidst the ruin, one burning question pierced through all doubt. What part would Captain Titus himself play in the fate of Ultramar, as its champion, its savior, or its undoing? Because now, more than ever, the line between hero and traitor was as thin and fragile as the whispering shadows in the dark. The hidden war had only begun to reveal its terrible face, and the next move could change everything. The ruins of the fortress monastery lay smoldering, the acrid scent of burnt stone and scorched servo armor hanging heavy in the stale air. Captain Titus stood amidst the rubble, a solitary silhouette against shattered stained glass windows that now framed the stormy skies above Macragge like broken, jagged mirrors. Lightning flickered on the distant horizon, a living pulse echoing the storm surging inside him. The battlefield had quieted for now, but the silence was a fragile mask stretched taut over a gathering tempest, promising chaos just beyond perception's reach. Something dark lurked in the depths of the fortress, an ancient malevolence awakening, swelling with cruel inevitability. Titus felt its weight not just in the world's fractures, but etched deep within his very soul. His forces had held, but barely. Warriors, loyal and broken, had fallen not only to alien claws and war-blighted enemies, but to the insidious poison that infected hearts from within. The network beneath Ultramar whispered still, each pulse a call to unravel the bonds of brotherhood, to turn kin against kin. The shattered peace writhed as the subtle threads of fate began to snap. Titus's mind churned over every discovery, every lost brother, every echo of betrayal. He had once believed Ultramar's power was absolute, an unyielding beacon of order in a galaxy consumed by madness. Now, that belief fractured like the mosaic of shattered history that surrounded him. Could he still wield strength enough to stem the tide? Or would he become the newest casualty of a war no blade could win? He turned, stepping through the shattered halls toward the War Council chamber, where the few remaining leaders struggled to hold their fractured unity together. The air inside was electric with suppressed fear, their faces drawn tight with exhaustion and disbelief. Each looked to Titus, not with hope, but with the weight of burdens shared and futures uncertain. "Captain," Chief Librarian Antoros greeted him, his voice grave. "The network is evolving. It learns from our countermeasures, adapting and striking faster than we can respond. It twists our own defenses against us. It is as if Ultramar itself is turning its claws inward." Antoros' words reddened the room like spilled blood. If the chapter's fortress had become a battleground defined not only by enemy siege, but by internal collapse, what hope remained for the worlds beyond? Titus swallowed hard, the iron grip of fatalism tightening. We must sever the network's heart before it becomes our undoing. But the path is unknown, and the cost will be great. Valkyr stepped forward, his mechanical eyes glinting with a cold fire. "I have traced power conduits to an ancient command nexus beneath the old catacombs, a place where the dark mechanicum once forged unimaginable terrors. It is there we must strike." A hush fell. This was no longer just a battle of men and xenos, but a war against shadows of the past, against the corrupted essence of Ultramar's own history. Preparations began immediately, warriors gathering relics, bolters charging, and psychers steeling themselves against the psychic storms to come. Titus felt the weight of every soul counted on his leadership, a weight that no armor could fully bear. But even amid this gritty urgency, moments of quiet desolation punctuated the harrowing march forward. One evening, in the dim solitude of his quarters, Titus cradled the cracked hollow of a fallen comrade, a sergeant lost to the corruption's gnawing grasp. The image shimmered faintly, a smile frozen between pain and loyalty. Titus's fingers trembled as memories flooded, of laughter shared, battles fought, and promises made at dawn. "How can I fight when the enemy wears my brother's faces?" he murmured to the silence. The question lingered unanswered. Yet the storm gathered, insistent and unyielding. Descending into the catacombs, the air grew thick with ancient dust and the hum of forgotten engines, machines that had long ceased to serve but never truly died. Shadows clawed at the torchlight, as whispers of long-dead voices unearthed chilling secrets. The deeper they delved, the more tangible the sense of something watching, calculating. Titus's boots echoed on cracked stone, joined by the measured steps of his selected warriors. Psychers channeled warding sigils, screens flickered with static, and the weight of destiny pressed against their minds and bodies alike. Abruptly, pathway opened into a vast chamber, vast beyond imagination. At its center, the obelisk pulsed with sinister life. A web of conduits attached it to the cavernous walls, radiating pulse after pulse of corrupted energy. The entire chamber seemed to breathe, alive with both machine and warp-blessed malevolence. As Titus approached, a sudden vision struck, this time, not a flicker, but a full onslaught. He saw worlds consumed by flame, entire legions broken by the unseen enemy, and darkest of all, the face of Guilliman himself, transformed into a herald of despair. The future spilled before him like shattered glass, fragmented, brutal, and merciless. He collapsed to one knee, breath stolen by the unrelenting horror, the palpable horror of what countless futures might unfold. Chief Librarian Antoros knelt beside him, voice harsh yet grounding. This vision is a warning, not a prophecy. The path is ours to choose, Titus. But to do so, we must confront the source. And then, the chamber quaked violently. From the shadows beyond, a figure strode forward, a spectral form clad in corrupted blue armor, the same Ouroboros sigils glowing malevolently upon its breastplate. It was Ardelius Valkyr, but not as Titus had ever known him. He was transformed, part man, part machine, and something far worse, a conduit of the very corruption they sought to destroy. Titus. Valkyr's voice rang through the chamber, layered with both pleading and menace. You cannot save this Imperium by old means. It must be remade, purified through destruction and rebirth. Join me, and we can wield power beyond reason. Titus's hand instinctively fell to his blade, but uncertainty held him fast. Valkyr's gaze pierced him with something like sorrow laced with fanaticism. You are the anomaly, the spark of resistance, but even your flame burns towards ruin if you refuse to evolve. The air thickened as the forces in the chamber braced, the tension coiling to the snapping point. In that suspended moment, Titus realized the war unfolding was not merely a battle against alien foulness or heretical cults. It was a war for Ultramar's soul, for the integrity of its very essence. And the ultimate choice was no longer just about survival. It was about what Ultramar would become, to embrace the ancient corruption and wield its terrible power, risking all humanity's lost honor, or to fight with the last, pure light burning in his heart, no matter the cost. The chamber hummed, poised on the razor's edge of decision. And then silence, the calm before the final storm. The fate of Ultramar balanced, waiting for the moment when secrets bled into reckoning and the true war could begin. Titus's breath caught, heartbeat pounding in the stillness, as the shadows around them shifted, promising revelations that would reshape everything. The hidden war was reaching its breaking point, and what came next would echo through eternity. A silence stretched, thick and suffocating, as the forces in the ancient chamber tread the fragile border of fate. Captain Titus's eyes locked with Ardelius Valkyr's, once comrade, now avatar of corruption. In that brief, charged moment, time itself seemed to fracture, as if the universe paused to witness Ultramar's final judgment. Valkyr's mechanical breath hissed softly, a distorted echo of humanity lost. You see only destruction or salvation, Titus, but the truth lies somewhere beyond choice. The Imperium must either evolve or perish. I offer you transcendence. Together we could shape a new dawn. The words hung like a dark melody, seductive and terrible. For a pulse, Titus's world wavered, torn between loyalty to old oaths and the seductive promise of power to end this hidden war once and for all. But then, deep within the storm of doubt, a blazing core flared, a memory, a principle, a light unbroken. No, Titus's voice was steel, quiet but unyielding. You speak of evolution as if corruption were progress. I see chains masquerading as wings. I will not betray the Emperor's light, nor the sacrifice of my brothers. Valkyr's face twisted, a blend of anger, sorrow, and something like regret. Then you leave me no choice. With a ruthless motion, dark energies surged from the warped conduits connecting the obelisk. The chamber erupted, a violent explosion of light and shadow, a chaotic symphony of devastating power. The stone beneath them cracked and shifted as the very fabric of reality trembled. Titus leapt forward, blade drawn, cutting through chains of eldritch energy that threatened to consume him. His warriors surged behind him, bolters roaring and power fists crushing, locked in ferocious combat against warped abominations and the sinister mechanized horrors Valkyr summoned. Every swing, every burst of fire was a desperate stand against oblivion. Lightning flashed, illuminating the horror with brief, spectral clarity. Warp spawn twisting in grotesque shapes, fallen brothers turned into horrors beyond recognition, and Valkyr, an unstoppable force, morphing between machine and abyss. The clash of wills stretched toward eternity. But amidst the chaos, Titus found clarity. This was no longer just a battle of flesh and steel, but the ultimate war of conviction. Here, in the heart of darkness, the choices that would define Ultramar's fate crystallized: sacrifice or surrender, hope or despair, light or shadow. A sudden surge of psychic energy hit him like a comet. Visions seared into his mind. Faces of the fallen, the cries of innocence, the weight of generations who had bled for Ultramar's ideals. Each vision a plea for survival, for meaning beyond the endless cycle of war. Titus channeled that burning resolve. With a roar that echoed through the chamber, he struck, piercing Valkyr's mechanical heart with a blade suffused by the Emperor's own grace. The corrupted warrior convulsed, shards of unholy energy shattering like glass. Valkyr's final words floated on a dying breath. "You may win the battle, Captain, but the war is eternal." The obelisk trembled violently, its grip on the warp's chaotic tides loosening. The dark hum faded, replaced by a fragile silence. Titus stood amid the ruin, chest heaving and armor battered. The hidden war's fire had dimmed, but the scars it left were deep, etched not only in stone and flesh, but in the soul of Ultramar. In the fading light, Chief Librarian Antoros approached, his gaze somber yet full of cautious hope. "You have struck a vital blow, Captain, but the echoes of this war will resonate long. Healing must begin, not simply of wounds, but of trust fractured and faith shaken." The chamber, once a tomb of darkness, now seemed poised on the edge of dawn. The weight that had pressed on the chapter began to lift, but the cost was undeniable. Brothers were lost, innocence shattered. The specter of corruption still lingered, a shadow never fully exorcised. Outside, the skies of Macragge cleared, revealing glimmers of stars, silent witnesses to Ultramar's enduring struggle. Titus gazed upward, shoulders heavy but unbroken. In the quiet that followed, a whisper stirred within him, a solemn vow. Ultramar would rise again, not as a realm untouched by darkness, but as a fortress tempered by trials, a light forged from both shadow and flame. As the surviving warriors began their slow march home, carrying the fallen and the memories of war, Titus allowed himself a momentary breath, a brief reprieve before the next storm. For the hidden war had revealed its truth. Victory was not in the absence of darkness, but in the will to face it. And as long as that will burned, Ultramar would endure. The battle was won. The war was far from over. And in the depths of the quiet fortress, new stories waited to be forged. Stories of hope, sacrifice, and the eternal fight for the soul of the Imperium. The tempest had passed. The storm within the fortress monastery of Macragge had stilled, leaving behind a landscape scarred but enduring, echoing with the silent breath of survival. Captain Titus stood beneath the expansive vault of the ruined sanctuary, the fractured ceiling now a canopy of twilight stars, silent witnesses to a chapter's darkest hours and its fragile hope. Around him, the air was thick with the scent of damp stone and ancient incense, mingling with the faint metallic tang of battle's residue. Warriors moved quietly, their faces marked not just with grime and fatigue, but with a new awareness, the subtle understanding that the war they fought was far more than flesh and blood. It was a war upon the very essence of identity, belief, and loyalty. Titus's gaze drifted out across the shattered expanse of the courtyard, where scavengers and servitors already worked to clear debris, to rebuild, to reforge what was broken. The sun's light struck through pierced walls and splintered buttresses, painting long shadows that stretched like veiled memories across scorched earth. In that quiet moment, a whisper stirred deep within the captain's soul, the echo of countless fallen voices, the cadence of sacrifices etched into the marrow of time. It was a reminder that even as darkness rises, the flame of conviction can burn steadfast, delicate yet indomitable. He thought back to the first question that had shadowed his return. Could Ultramar truly be saved if the enemy wore the faces of brothers? Could the light that guided them withstand the corrosive whisper of doubt, fear, and hidden corruption? The answer had revealed itself not in grand declarations or acts of sheer force, but in the resilience of choice. The choice to stand firm when every instinct urged surrender, to hold fast to honor when the weight of despair threatened to shatter the mind. The enemy was not solely the shadow beyond the walls, but the shadow within, the eternal struggle between light and dark, faith and doubt, hope and fear. Titus lowered his visor for a brief moment, shielding his eyes from the emerging dawn. In that solitude, a quiet revelation crystallized. Victory was not a single moment or conquest, but a continuous act of courage, the kind that does not demand perfection, but demands unwavering perseverance despite imperfection. The chapter's survival depended on more than weapons or ranks. It depended on the souls who chose to fight, not only for glory, but for redemption and the enduring possibility of a future forged beyond the scars of war. In the distance, the solemn chant of the Battle Brothers rose, not a boast, but a quiet hymn of remembrance and resolve, each voice a thread woven into the tapestry of hope, binding past to future. Titus stepped forward, his footsteps steady, echoing in harmony with the cadence of this new beginning. No longer burdened by the illusion of invincibility, he carried the weight of humility and wisdom earned in the crucible of conflict. As dawn spread its gentle light across Macragge, painting the ruins with hues of gold and amber, the question lingered, silent, profound. What does it mean to be a guardian of a realm when the greatest enemy lies not outside the walls, but within ourselves? Can a war fought in shadows ever fully end? Or does true peace demand confronting the darkness that dwells in every heart? These were not questions with easy answers, nor did they need to be. Their power lay in their endurance, in the quiet invitation to reflect and grow beyond the tempest. A subtle breeze stirred, carrying with it the faint scent of blooming garlands from Ultramar's distant gardens, a reminder that life, fragile and persistent, continued its eternal march. As the screen fades to black, the viewer is left in silent reverence, holding space for the story's lingering truth. In the ceaseless darkness of the universe, it is the steady light within that defines who we are and what we fight to protect. If this story awakens something in you, a spark of reflection or wonder, please take a moment to like, share, and comment. Let the light of these tales spread beyond the screen, bridging communities in the timeless fight for hope and honor. The story of Captain Titus and Ultramar does not end here. It lives on in every question, every choice, every silent vow whispered beneath the stars.